It's important to perform firmware updates as soon as they're released. It helps keep your devices up to date with the latest bug fixes, improvements, or new protection from vulnerabilities. Upgrading from version 3.1 to version 3.2 on your Cisco Business Switch has some upgrades that take longer than usual to load. In this episode of Cisco Tech Talk, I will show you how to update the firmware of a Cisco Business 250 or 350 switch from version 3.1 to version 3.2. If you've performed updates on your Cisco Business switches before, this process works the same way. However, if your switch has Power over Ethernet, PoE, in addition to updating the firmware, it'll update a microcontroller unit, MCU, on the switch from version 0xEE to 0xF0. As a result, this will extend the time that it takes to do the update. Unlike normal firmware updates, which might take 3 to 5 minutes, this version will take approximately 10 minutes on a standalone switch. It may take even longer if you're dealing with a stack of switches. It's extremely important to be patient and not interfere with this process once it has begun. First things first, connect to the web user interface of your CBS switch. To access the firmware update menu, navigate to Administration and then to File Management and click on Firmware Operations. I also have a console cable connected into the same switch and opened a program called PuTTY so that I can monitor what's happening during the upgrade process. I recommend you do the same. To perform the upgrade, click the Browse button to select the firmware. Here, I'm going to choose firmware version 3.2.0.89, as I'm going to be upgrading from version 3.1.1.7. Click the Apply button, and it'll start uploading the new firmware. Once the files have been uploaded, the next step is to tell the switch to swap the image to firmware version 3.2.0.89 on the next reboot. Click on the Swap Image for the operation type and hit Apply. As you can see, no messages can be seen on the PuTTY screen at this point. Next, navigate to the Reboot menu in the web user interface. Click the Reboot button and confirm by clicking OK. At this point, I'll switch over back to my console and it'll start the reboot process. As a reminder, this will take approximately 10 minutes. It is very important that during this reboot process, you do not interrupt the update with a power cycle on the switch. Do not unplug it, plug it back in, or hit the reset button. It can permanently damage the switch. Just be patient and let the update fully complete. Why is this so important? Because even when the switch has loaded the new firmware, it still needs to complete the MCU update. This progress can only be viewed on the console menu and not in the web user interface. In PuTTY, you can see that it's booting the operating system and that it's going to be loading firmware version 3.2.0.89. You can see the switch is loading the running and startup configuration and the MCU version 0xEE. A notification regarding the MCU firmware upgrade will be seen on the PuTTY screen. That will also remind you not to power off or reboot the device during the MCU firmware upgrade. This can take around 5 minutes. I can't stress this enough. Leave your switch alone during this process to avoid any issues. Following the MCU update, the switch will perform another reboot that'll take a few more minutes. Once that's completed, the switch will load the active image, followed by an auto boot process. Okay, the device has loaded firmware version 3.2.0.89. Here, you can see it's loading the running and startup configuration. You can see that the MCU version has been updated to 0xF0. After loading the operating system, the switch will prompt you to enter a username and password. At this point, your patience has been rewarded. The firmware update has been completed successfully. Now, go back to the web user interface of the switch and log into the device. Navigate to Status and Statistics, and then System Summary in the menu to verify that the switch is running the new 3.2.0.89 firmware. There you go. You've successfully completed updating the firmware of your CBS switch. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.